Everybody was sitting because nobody was being an omed l'shores to serve the Rabbanu Shalom. And that's why it was very cold in Shushan in those days. It was Yemos HaGshami. Well, the Maisa, you may ask, it doesn't say in the whole Megillah. The whole Megillah covers about 12 years of Persian history. It doesn't mention once in the Megillah that it rained in Shushan or snowed. So how do we know it was taka cold weather and it was raining and snowing? Because l'chatchila you would think says that what's and you can't say because the Megillah doesn't talk about the weather because it says Kichein Devar HaMelech Lifnei Kol Yodei Das Vodim Yodei Ha'itim. The king asked the people to know the times, the weathermen. So you see that the Megillah does speak about the weather. And it would seem to be that it was not cold and rainy because they made a party begisan hamelech. They made a party outside in the gina. But it says that there was karpas growing in the gina. Chur karpas uschelas. And I looked it up, and karpas needs a lot of water to be able to grow. So it must have been raining, right? And that's why it says that outside in the gina was ochuz bechavle boots. There was a lot of mud, right? And some people say that it means boots, but it's the same thing. Because if they needed boots, there obviously was mud. So if it was boats, there must have been boots. So the Maisa, either way, woo! Whatever girsa you have, there must have been mud. If there was mud, there must have been rain. If there was rain, right? So the Maisa, there's no raya that they were out in the Gina. That it wasn't raining, it was raining, and there was a lot of mud.
There were no boots. There were only chavle boots. They were only the laces from the boots.
Wow! The particles are connected all together, and they make one big boot.
Even though. Usherstein, even though you impersonate me, that doesn't mean you are me. Woo! Don't get carried away. Next year, I'm going to impersonate Usherstein impersonating me. You know what was in that bracha? How much chokhmah and kavana. Unbelievable. In any case, why are you late, man?
No, we had trouble opening the
All my other children are late to everything. You have to be late too. Okay, now. So the Maisa, even though everybody was sitting down, and that's because everything was cold, for the Maisa we also find out the opposite. V'chamoso bo'arabo says that things were hot. So was it cold or was it hot? The answer is that it depends what season it was. So Shisha Chadoshim b'Shemen Hamor, Mor is Mar Cheshvan, is rain, the rainy season. The Shisha Chadoshim b'Samim u'b'Samuki Anoshim, that's deodorant. When do you need deodorant? In the summer, when it's hot. Right. So there was. We'll answer that Taka why. So there was 6 months of rainy, cold, and 6 months when it was hot, when they needed deodorant. And that's why it says that Lamaisa. No, Lamaisa. Really, it was hot in Shushan, but the women made it cold. So it says,
that's why it's what's
all the women gave cold to their husbands, right? And that's why it says, Kedai bizoyon v'kotzef. Kotzef means foam, is snow. They made it cold and they made it snow. And that's why it says, Vayikso Hamelech Ma'ol, king. So in the beginning it was taka hot, and in the end it was taka cold because the women made it cold. And that's why it says Chamoso Borabo, Inside it was hot, but outside it was cold. Okay, now, that's why it says that big son v'teres. Kotzaf, big son v'teres.
He also made the melech coat?
Big son. No, that says afterwards. Chamas HaMelech Shachacha. Because then he was hot, then he forgot about the hot, then he became cold. That's why Kotzaf, big son v'teres. Big son v'teres wanted to send a lot of foam, a lot of snow, and l'shloach yod b'malach. What was the yod? Yadayim Yadei Esav. And Esav had very hairy arms. And when Yaakov wanted to play like Esav, he put Semer on his arms. And it says, Hano saying Semer Kasholim. Semer and snow are the same thing. So they needed Semer on their arms, which is like snow, and that's what they wanted to send the snow, and that's what it says. Like Kotzaf, big son of the Seresh, they send the foam from the snow. That's why it says, Haman said they're mefuzar u'meforah. Mefazer kifor ko'efer mefazer. Mefuzar is hail, right? And that's why it says he built 4. He threw down the hail. Now that's why it always bothered me. It says Haman didn't know that Mordechai wasn't bowing to him. How didn't he know? Because Mordechai was sitting down. Because since it was cold, lifnei karaso miyamod, you can't stand up when it's cold. So Mordechai was sitting. If you're sitting, you can't really tell if you're bowing, you're not bowing, you were sitting. So that's why Haman didn't know if Mordechai was bowing or not. But then it says, Vayagidu laHaman liros hayam du divrei Mordechai. Then they wanted Mordechai to stand up. Once he was standing up, Vayar Haman ki Mordechai koreo mishlachem v'lo. Because once he's standing, you can see if he's bowing or not. But in the beginning, he was sitting because it was cold.
How long is the Megillah here?
Now,
if the Rav thinks about all this during the Megillah,
that's why it says
it was very long.
That Achashverosh
not too long, very long.
Took his tabas me'al yodos. It never bother you. It should have said, Vayikach hamelech es tabato me'al etzbo. You wear your ring on a finger, not on your hand. What kind of ring do you wear in a hand? Gloves. He took his gloves off and gave them to Haman because it was very cold. He needed gloves. But Achashverosh was hot inside. B'chamoso borabo, you didn't need the gloves. Right? He was insulated on the inside, but Haman was cold, he needed on the outside. And that's why it says Haman wanted to destroy Minar v'Yatzokein, Tav v'Noshim. Right? He wanted to make it cold for all the Jews, and that's where we have the idea of cars for kids. Right? Where it's cars, even for the children.
Cars are very dangerous.
Now comes for those people who come to me, the Amid Yom here will understand this. Some of them at least. You don't come to the Amid Yom here, then you have to, right? You had to say a gomo b'chwal.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Amen.
He was in a car accident. No, he was in a motorcycle accident. The guy in the car was in the car accident. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you something very interesting about the Megillah. If you're cold,
come on,
and you're sitting, can't stand to be Oved Hashem. So there's a way to get out of it. The way to get out of it is to make Yibum. That's what you
said that last year.
And then Lahakim Shem. So you can stand up, even if you're sitting, right? You can make what's it called? Now Esther was married to quite a few people. We'll have to see how it worked out. Esther was married to Mordechai. Then it says that she was married to Chen and Chesed before she married Achashverosh. Vatisa Chen v'Chesed l'fanav. Before she married Achashverosh, she married Chen v'Chesed. Now, the kasha we never asked before is, how come it doesn't mention Mordechai?
Chalitza.
It should have said Vatisa Mordechai Chen v'Chesed l'fanav. She married Mordechai and Chen and Chesed before she married Achashverosh. But the truth is, see, what happened was Esther's parents died, her father and her mother. and her Megadol, the one who brought her up. See, her father's name was Avichail. It says Esther Bas Avichail. Then it says Esther Bas Dodo. Who is this Dodo guy? Right? If she was Esther Bas Avichail, she couldn't have been Esther Bas Dodo. Dodo was the guy who brought her up. So she was called on the name of Megadla, and the guy who brought her up was Dodo. So Dodo married her off to Mordechai. But the halacha is, for those who come to the Amid Yom Rishir, know that if a girl is a ketana and her father and mother die, and only her Megadol can marry her off, it's only the Rabbanon. It's kind of the Rabbanon. That's why it says she married Mordechai when she was a ketana, and that's why it says, "Vayihi Omein es Hadassah." He made miyum on her. Right? That's the same thing that happened to Vashti. It says like Moin Vashti. Vashti also made miyum. But in any case, Esther was Mimayin in Mordechai. She never was married to him. That's why it doesn't mention that she was married to Mordechai before Achashverosh, because she wasn't really married to him. She made miyun and the Kedusha was brought from Mafreya. Right, Mafreya was brought. But she was married to Chain and Chesed. Now, who was this Chain and Chesed? So first of all, Chain and Chesed were one person. Chain was his name, and Chesed was his family name. Chesed is Yamin, is the right side. Bura is the left side. Chain, no. Chain, Chesed. Chesed, that's not Kasha. No, it's a Kasha. 1 second. I got to, my son is a big Talmud Chacham, so he's got a good Kasha. But it's Muchach that Chain and Chesed are one person, because it says after that Tehi Esther no say Chain. What happened to Chesed? Vice, it was only Chain. And Chesed was just the family name. Chesed was Yemini. Who was that? Who was the brother? Who was also Ish Yemini? Mordechai. So Chain, who was Chesed, who was Yemini, was Mordechai's brother. Okay? Now, 1 second. They had another brother. His name was Achashverosh. Achashverosh was Mordechai's brother and Chain's brother. How do I know that? Because it says Achashverosh was Achiv Shel Rosh. And it also says B'samim Rosh, Mordror is Mordechai. So Mordechai was called Rosh, and Achashverosh was the Achiv Shel Rosh, so he was Mordechai's brother. He was also Chain's brother. Chain died, right? Batisa Chain Lefanav. Chain died, and now Mordechai and Achashverosh was going to, and Esther wanted to become a Yavama to be able to stand up. So she didn't have to sit down and not be Oved the Rabbanu Shalom. And the way to be Omed is to make Yibum. There's only one problem. Mordechai made Maimer in Esther first. It says, V'yas Maimer Mordechai Esther. Right? So Esther was the Maimer of Mordechai. And once he made Maimer, then Achashverosh couldn't be Miyabim anymore. He could only give her Chalitza. And Chalitza already brings him back to the cold. Because it says, V'yorka the fun of, right? She made him cold and took off his shoes. And they made him cold, and that was the end. How do you know that Mordechai made chalitza in Esther? Because it says, like lahalbish Mordechai ulahoser sako me'olav. Didn't it bother you? How in the world can you be maldishim before you take off the sock? It should have said lahoser sako and then lahalbish Mordechai. No, the pshat is lahoser sako meant to take off his shoe.
But the sack is not the
right? What?
The sack is
no, it was because it was later on. It says in the Megillah. It says that Mordechai, right? Mordechai got chalitza because it says kocha yeyosa loish, which is chalitza, and it says v'noson halavush. What's it called? Yavil lavush malchus asher lovosh bo hamelech v'sus. What kind of lavush could the melech wear that a sus also wore? Right? What garment could a man wear that also a sus? The answer is horseshoes. Right? So it was a shoe. So that sock was a shoe. Right? So he made a chalitza. Right? And then that was a chalitza shoe, which was also on a horse because it was leather. And the what's it called? And that's why they said kocha yeosel. When they took off his shoe, then they needed clothes because now he's cold again. Because Lamaisa, once there's yibum, there's no amida. Then it's not yokim shem ochiv, right? Leochiv shem. And then they were back to sitting down, right? Lamaisa. Therefore, they needed extra clothes to keep warm.